My name is Luke Griffiths.
And I'm Michelle Bunting, and we are the creative team behind the Windows into Homelessness experience.
And what are we doing today, Michelle?
So we're just going to watch through the experience and have a bit of a chat about each of the scenes, maybe some of the creative choices that we made, some of the challenges that we faced, and I guess overall how we feel about the project.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, hey, let's get started.
Let's do
We'll
this.
just chat as we go. Mm-hmm. So.
I actually really love this particular shot, and we just got lucky that there was, with the sunset, it was already quite pink. So we graded it, but that's really how it looked on the day.
I love these titles, especially
how it opens up into the alleyway.
Yeah, and sort of that sort of theme. It's sort of like, we'd made it so that the titles overlay the scene behind it. So I wasn't thinking about this ahead of time, but then as we're doing it, I realized, these are kind of like windows into the next scene. And I thought it was a really nice way to sort of transition between the scenes. So between every one of those titles where it's overlaying the screen, we've actually set the scenes to fade into each other behind it. So I felt like it gave us a really good, nice way, a nice cohesive way of transitioning between each scene. And so then I think, Michelle, you pulled up a bunch of like different relevant statistics and stuff to put on the titles that would sort of join the two scenes together.
So like this one, is it?
Well, This one's a bit different. I mean, because this one is one where it's not backing, but this was a sort of another idea of mine where I wanted it to give, I was always really needed that feeling of making sure people really enticing people to look around the space and stuff.
Well, for you, it was important that no matter what we were doing, we were always using the full sort of 360.
Yeah.
And so
setting up those titles so that it would force to read it. It would force the viewer to look back to us, sort of over their right shoulder, just to give them a real incentive to look around. But then what we did next was used a little wipe here, which led back to the center point, so that it would reorient all the viewers back to
where they needed
ground zero, which would make it easier for us to be able to frame the next shot. There's my house. Not the same house we're actually inside now. And there's you, Michelle.
And that's my house, my mum's house.
Yeah.
So our involvement on camera was budgeting.
Yeah.
Both budget, we didn't have to pay ourselves because, like the actors in this scene, we do sometimes struggle to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And the convenience of just being able to go and shoot and not having to schedule
Other people.
This scene in particular, do you want to hit pause?
Yeah.
Was really, really tricky with the tripod removal. I had to go through and do this one a few times. If you scroll to the left, like you can.
I can still see a little bit of the tripod. To the fact that you can see the tripod there.
To the right. Anyway, so yeah.
Let's look down too, hey?
No, don't. Oh no.
It's okay.
So this was the most challenging, and we had such a quick.
Yeah.
We had such a tight deadline for it to be ready for the Social Impact Festival that we're going to go back. We've got a bit more time now to go back and make a few changes, and I think that'll be one that I do.
Well, I think too is that was we reshot the scene because we got a little bit creative. If we were creative with our shot choices and putting people. I wanted to put people nearer the camera, but that did mean that stitching became a really big issue.
Didn't you cut off half my head?
Oh, I cut off mostly my head, really. You were okay. You had a bit of a weird half face thing. But yeah.
So this is the front of my mum's house?
Yeah, so this is the front of that same house, although it's supposed to be a different location. And that was you again.
And I for me, it was really important. I was particularly excited. I was gone now, but I was particularly excited about the way that we could use text to really draw out those key, I guess, defining messages and moments of each scene to reinforce what was happening visually. And so, yes, I'm a big fan of the graphics.
Yeah, and if we pause here for just a second, one really fun fact is, technically I'm standing, well, it would be back and to your left, about where that drain is right there. And you can kind of see my shoulder a little bit right there. So it's always a little bit of fun of cutting ourselves out of the scene. So the way I ended up cutting myself out of that scene was that I stood there while the scene was happening. And then what I did is after we finished the scene, so after say Ryan had walked off, we paused and I just moved to another spot and then just cut myself out. So I'm technically in pretty much every shot here, but I've just removed myself from it. And it was we did that way because it was a good way to be able to watch the scene.
Yeah, and then one of us could always be present with the actors.
I do really love it. And the other thing these titles did well for us is that they made the viewer always kind of look back to the center again. This scene here is one that I'm particularly proud of in terms of our actual blocking and using 360. So I really like this idea of, we start off, we see this girl come out and then she looks off camera. And so then most people's instinct is to go, all right, well, what is she actually looking at? And then you sort of see her parents and they're sort of off in the distance. And it's a bit meant to be a little bit ominous and a bit scary. You're not exactly sure what's going on, but the dad doesn't look good. But then the other part of it is that some people have picked up on, and something that I was sort of thinking is that you've now kind of also transitioned to the girl's perspective of this. And so it puts you in a very first person kind of way without it feeling weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Russell's brilliant portrayal.
Yeah. So where they are in the kitchen, I'm off camera, I'm off to the side and out of view. Yeah. And every time we did this scene, I would jump at just how authentic their fights were. It was pretty scary.
Particularly proud of that little wipe on the titles there, because that took a while to do, but it was I just really wanted to have that kind of moving kind of diegetic text thing going on.
And let's go back to Zoe. So I think what's really important to mention here is when...
Yeah.
Yeah, so no play? Cool. So what we did with that is, because we didn't actually want Zoe, the little girl who was just adorable, to be present for the massive sort of conflict that you heard there once the door had closed, is so what happened is once Evie, who was playing the mum, closed the door, we actually cut, and Luke stayed with Zoe and encouraged her to react in the way that you see her, where she grips Luke's teddy bear a bit more tightly, and you can hear her reacting to the violence that's happening behind the closed door. But we actually shot that at different times. So we, as soon as Evie closed the door, we actually cut, and then Zoe's mum, who was in the room next to Zoe the whole time, she took Zoe for a drive so that we could film the audio, or so we could capture the audio for the kind of the massive conflict, so that Zoe wouldn't actually have to see or experience it herself.
And that was something we sort of thought of ahead of time, because I've always felt a bit iffy about putting children in some of those pretty, those very brutal environments. So yeah, it was sort of, and we figured it was even more effective. It was more effective to just hear it and like not see it. And I mean, the thing is, people, you can always, when we're watching it, because people have the headset on, we're not reacting to them, but you sort of see them just tense up and get really tense through this scene. So I think it's quite effective, and I'm very proud of how that came together.
Yeah, it was a really powerful scene. Everyone always comments. The feedback that we get is always of just how terrifying that particular scene is.
Here's another my fade behind the credits thing. I just in love with that. I was so proud of how that sort of came together. And this scene too, I really like it, this scene. Because this was a big one in terms of breaking the room up into various frames and like trying to keep it cinematic, but in a way where you realize that, do you want to talk about these
Oh yeah,
these
so that was
here?
just there were certain sort of creative choices or just things that I wanted to experiment with in videos, because that's what we do. And that text message bubble was definitely something. I'd been looking for an opportunity to do that, and this presented the perfect chance. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out.
I think it's really effective, and it fits in with that sort of titles kind of theme and keeping them sort of diegetic as much as possible.
What do you mean by that?
Diegetic is like when it's part of the scene.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah.
It interacts with, So, and the other thing, I guess the thing sort of going back to the is sort of using some more traditional filmmaking techniques in a 360 way. So you have things like he's moving, so then he cuts across, but it's sort of like, you're using same sort of techniques with motivation moving and stuff as you would with like a camera, in a film. So it's always about keeping an angle of motion and stuff going, but then, being able to cut ahead and break the scene up into these different kind of frames, but also, keeping it quite cinematic and how that was working.
I love how that...
Yeah.
And that just really encapsulates that whole I was getting desperate.
Yeah.
That transition from one scene into the next. So now we've got the mum and the daughter again, and they're hiding in a car. They've escaped, and now they're just regrouping. But yeah, I really love, because I was getting desperate. It's just so much her story as it was the last.
Yeah. Oh, as both of those.
I forgot about those wipes. Those wipes are awesome.
Yeah, it took a while to do, actually. I mean, they're not technically very difficult, but we did all of this inside Premiere because at the time After Effects couldn't do 360 stuff. So all of this was done keyframed in Premiere, which Premiere is pretty clunky at it, I'll be honest. So that's me in the car there. That's me driving around. And one thing I want to do, experiment with this, is another one of those you're trying to utilize 360 is just having a point of reference of something to like follow and stuff. So, and giving people a choice of what to look at. So you've got something interesting you have the mother and her daughter there but they're also being affected like in terms of lighting from the car and stuff. So as an audience member, as a viewer, you have the choice, if you want to follow the car around, or you can look at them, but they're both important to the scene and say independent things but reinforce each other.
That's true.
And also just, trying to go for that real threatening kind of red light thing. It took a lot of testing to get this right and to know where.
We spent a lot of time in that car park, just Luke and I.
Yeah.
And it's a shame you can't really tell that, you can kind of if you look closely.
Yeah.
Do you want to hit pause? That Jennifer Ellis is a local makeup artist, and we've worked on her on pretty much every project we've ever done.
Yeah.
She's awesome, and she came and did like a fake black eye on Evie, which we know that it's there, so I can tell. But if I didn't know that she'd been made up that way, I probably wouldn't be able to see it, which is a shame because it looked very realistic.
Yeah, and that's one of the big drawbacks, at least with shooting with the Omni, is that there's no monitoring. So we couldn't monitor it or view anything. So I had to basically light. So I lit the scene, and there's a bunch of LED light panels all around the place. In fact, you can even see it right if you look to your left. It's actually in shot, but you can't really tell. I like these little holes, and there's one above the car that's sort of pointing down at the front there too. But the thing is that I really had to just judge that off by eye and instinct, and I couldn't tell, and because the turnaround of stitching the footage together and getting it into an edit system where you can watch it it took about 24 hours most of the time, because it just took a really long time to stitch those shots together. So didn't really know exactly what we got until we were done. So I think it looks really good. It would have been nice to have a little bit more light on Evie's face in that particular one, but overall the scene's still pretty effective.
Oh yeah, it's great. And so our process would be do the testing, feel like we knew where we were going to position the cameras, be relatively confident with what we were doing, and then shoot the scenes. And then Luke and I would just be crossing our fingers and hoping for the best as we going to kind of cut the scenes together to watch them for the first time, because we didn't really have the time or the budget to be able to call any of the actors back if we needed to reshoot anything, which fortunately, because we did so much testing, we didn't need to.
Yeah. So here's my favourite transition, because it cuts and then my torch shines behind the letters. It's like, oh yeah. Oops, didn't mean to stop that. And then there I am, again walking past the camera. See another one of those like motivated moves that I'm all into at the moment. And so it's sort of another one where, you know, well, we timed it so that the text and I could be on camera at the same time, but then it would give, once the text went away, you'd be inclined to follow me and follow where I am. And so just really trying to use that, you know, that kind of 360 space, and in a way treating everything like a pan and a tilt, but a voluntary pan and a tilt that the audience member decides to make.
So this is us in the local park where we walk our dog, and we have a very anxious, neurotic rescue greyhound who doesn't play well with other dogs, so we have to take her to the park late at night so she could actually have a run. And I think it was when we were doing that one night that we looked at that bench and went, yes, that is perfect.
And it was freezing.
It was so cold.
It was 1 degree. That night it was 1 degree. And I love that dog now. So this is another one of those where those wipes come to reorient us to back to center. And then this scene here this is sort of the more documentary part of the process. So I think this was something that Michelle wanted to do a lot more of in this documentary, but we just ran out of sort of time to do it.
Well, more as well, there were just challenges of, I guess, of course, with the sensitive nature of the themes that we're exploring. We were so grateful to St. Patrick's Community Centre and Victor, and who's one of the managers there, and Ian Bingham, who you see on screen now. So grateful for their willingness to trust us to tell Ian's story in 360, because I'd always thought it would be a documentary experience, but it just didn't turn out that way. And so fortunately, Luke's experience in drama and storytelling meant that what we did is each of those scenes that we've shot, that's grounded in real life experiences of people that either we spoke to as part of the research, or just from papers and discussions and statistics from the Australian Bureau of Statistics website.
And while we're here, I'd like to quickly talk about the double Ian thing. Now, this is also going back to me and I just don't want to shoot something where there's no reason for it to be a 360. So if it's, you know, for me, I do a lot of, you know, I'm a camera operator and editor and filmmaker and stuff in my career in general. And when working with 360, I had really no interest in just doing that again. But now, you know, with all the limitations that 360 kind of provides. So figuring out a way when basically we've just got one person, how do you make it interesting for a person to look around? And so we basically did the opposite of cutting ourselves out of the image. We did 2 passes with the camera, with Ian moving around, and then basically pasted him over, and then had his narration, his interview sort of over top of it. And I think it came across quite effectively. People seem to enjoy it and really like that idea that he's sort of, you know, you've got this one where he's directly looking at you. It was always a fun direction, you know, just stare at that camera intently. And then you've got, you know, then just be in your space. And I'm really happy with how they came out. Yeah, this particular one I'm particularly grateful of, is because creatively, I like, because there's some pretty tight cutting going on in the shoulder there, because Ian moves outside and the door changes and stuff. So yeah, it was pretty hard to pull together, but it worked. I love this quote.
So this is a quote from a gentleman that I spoke to who experienced homelessness and now works in the sector helping other people, other men in a situation similar to him. And so we were really grateful for he was very generous with his time and his insight, and this was one of his quotes. So he fortunately allowed us to use this to close the experience.
And then, this is just a...
Oh, is this the security guard?
Yeah, this is what the security guards were looking at us, and a lot of people, they were actually a lot more friendly than we cut out before we got to their really friendly part, but people are actually reacted going, oh, there's a security guard, I felt like I was in the wrong place, and then you're like, oh, that's what we're kind of going for.
Yeah, exactly. We got so lucky and we were just like, oh no, are they going to ask us to move on? But they came up to us and we're like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it was kind of good too, because at least when I was sort of thinking about doing like the city shots and stuff, we're out in the city, is that it was almost trying to do it like a first person perspective sort of thing. And it seems like people picked up on that, because when we had a few comments when the security cards came up that they felt like they were about to be told to move on. So,
which is what would happen. I mean, we were lucky we were there with a pretty fancy piece of technology that piqued their curiosity. But on any given day, maybe not necessarily with these gentlemen, I don't know, but if we had been someone who was homeless and we'd been in that alleyway, there would certainly be times where you would be asked to move on. So that's a very real fear and threat that people who are experiencing homelessness in Perth face every single day, which is just horrific to go through, to not have that security and to not have that compassion and understanding of the people who are walking by. So we owe so much to the Centre for Education Futures at the University of Western Australia. They gave us a grant to be able to make this experience and actually loaned us the technology. So a big shout out to them.
Yeah.
Without them, it wouldn't be possible. And also the Centre for Social Impact at the University of Western Australia, which is who we made this experience for. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, any parting words?
That's it.
Cool. Wow. This was a pretty stressful and hard project, but I'm really proud of how it turned out. And working with 360 was really rewarding. It was a really rewarding thing. I've mostly spoken about the technical aspects because that was what I was most interested in, and Michelle had all the factual and the dramatic stuff covered too. So, we feel like we worked together pretty well on that one.
Yeah, we did. Go team.
Go
Thank
team.
you.
Doo-doo-doo.